Welcome back. Class is in session here at the Apartment Academy, the multifamily industry's only operations-focused podcast and your institute of higher NOI. I'm the Dean of the Apartment Academy, your host, Daniel Cunningham. And today we have Daniel Berland guest lecturing here at the Academy. And Daniel is the CEO and founder of Snappt, which is a technology that really helps with fraud detection when it comes to resident applications. And if you haven't really thought about what an impact that can have on your operations, Daniel's going to shine a bright light on some of that today in the podcast. And I learned a lot myself about the matter. And so I can't always say that, but this was a real learning process for me too. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Here's Daniel. All right, Professor Berland, welcome to the Lecture Hall 101 here at the Apartment Academy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Daniel, let's just start off talking a little bit about Snappt, your company, of which you are founder and CEO. Just give us a little bit of high level what the company does, your value proposition in the industry.
Yeah, sure. So Snappt is a data-driven fraud detection technology. Essentially, what we do is we determine the authenticity of financial documents. So think bank statements, pay stubs, investment accounts. We just started doing utility billing as well. And for the moment, we're focused on the multifamily industry, helping owners and managers determine whether or not the applicants to their vacant units are submitting authentic financial documents.
I'm going to ask you more about why that's important. How did you're founder CEO, so this was your idea. How did you tell us a little about the journey along which you came up with this idea and launched the company?
Yeah, for sure. So, I co-founded this business with my best friend, Noah Goldman. Noah and I both grew up in LA. We've been friends since our early 20s. Both of us worked in the property management industry. Both of us had, family businesses that owned and managed portfolios in the LA market. And so, among, being friends, we obviously also were, work colleagues and, connected on all things property management. And one thing that we started to hit on really in 2017 and 2018 was that both of us were noticing that more and more of the applicants that were applying for our vacant units were submitting fake financial documents. So exactly what Snappt deals with now: fake bank statements, fake pay stubs. For us, we identified that this was not only time consuming for our teams, but there was a huge amount of subjectivity to our leasing teams looking at these documents and kind of using their own methods and playing detective, and really kind of putting us not only at a risk of bad debt, but also potentially fair housing violation of determining whether or not these documents were authentic or not. So we both assumed that there must be many companies like Snappt. We figured it would be kind of commoditized, just like ID verification is. We both went out and kind of did our research, and we synced up about a month later, and we were both shocked that neither of us found anything. So we decided to start on this crazy path of building this data-driven fraud detection technology business together.
Why? Well, that's a good segue, actually. Then why do you suppose the incidence of fake documents has increased in recent years? Is this, I don't know, more access to stuff you can, forms online that you can buy stuff from China that makes you look legitimate? Like, what's happening that's increased this problem?
Yeah, I think just the advancement and prevalence of PDF editing and photo editing technology. I mean, it's no secret that if you go to your online banking or online payroll and you want to download a document, it'll probably populate in a program similar to Adobe. There's a button on the right hand side that says edit PDF. You click that button and it makes every single element on the screen editable. Does a really good job of matching fonts, and within 20, 30 seconds, if you know what you're doing, you can change a PDF, or if you're a little bit savvy and you know what HTML editing is, you can go to the back end code of a web browser and move numbers around on your actual web browser to make it look within your bank's web browser that you have as much money as you decide to type in. So it's I think it's a function of how easy it is to commit fraud. I think part of it might be that applicants might not realize that what they're committing is financial fraud. And I think there's an argument to be made that with the increasing rents, that it's pushing more and more people to think that this is the only way that they can qualify.
Well, then let me ask you a real softball question for you. You ready? Um, who cares? I mean, they pay their rent, right? Like, do I really care that the guy said he's got a $100,000 a year job and he's really working two jobs, making 50,000? Like, as long as he pays his rent, like, what do I care?
Yeah, and I hear that, but I would challenge the statement that who cares they pay their rent. I mean, the data suggests basically that 50% of evictions in the U.S. are a result of application fraud, right? So that's costing our industry about $16 billion a year. If you look at data from many surveys.
So sorry, one out of half of all evictions. So half of all evictions are because they used fraudulent documents to secure the lease.
So it's a result of application fraud in general. So that's kind of the whole bucket. But if you look at the prevalence of application fraud, ID verification or fake ID, fake identity, you're looking at somewhere between 1, 2, maybe 3%. Versus, with Snappt, what we've seen with the almost 2 million documents that have run through our system, that 12.5% of our customers' applicants submit falsified documents. And essentially what that means is an applicant who's submitting a fake document is 7 times higher, as a 7 times higher probability of ending up in bad debt and eviction than obviously an applicant who qualifies and has authentic documents.
All right, and help translate that into some monetary impact.
Yeah, sure. So aside from the $16 billion that are lost each year in our industry, the average eviction cost nationally, and of course, we're looking at lost rent and um, uh, uh, legal costs, and every cost that's kind of associated with an eviction, you're looking at $7,500. So it's not tough for a couple of these evictions in a year or bad debt to add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
$7,500. So, have you? Not to put you on the spot here, but have you backed into an ROIs like, look, on a per unit basis that you will have zero point 0.5 evictions per unit per year, and that translates to X dollars per year based on 100 unit building. Like, can you give people listening some sense of, okay, I have a 100 unit building, it means I'm gonna be impacted.
Perfect. So the easiest example for a 100 unit building is, at least for us, we charge $1.50 per unit per month, right? So if it's a 100 unit building, we're going to charge you $150 a month. At the end of the year, that's what, $1,800. So if an eviction is, $7,500, essentially avoiding one eviction over the course of 12 months essentially pays for the software for 2 years. And when you think that the average property that's using Snappt is seeing, between 2 to 3 fraudulent applicants per month, I think we and our customers feel that the ROI is pretty high.
Yeah, yeah. Even I can do that math. Okay. You talked to probably one more thing, and then we want to talk about. You guys just did an interesting survey, which is what we want to talk about the results of that survey today. But what is the how do you guys do this? Like, is that the is that secret sauce? Like, we get a little peek behind the curtain, or is there some obvious way that you guys are actually able to make sure these documents are legitimate?
Yeah, sure. So basically, what we've done is we have figured out what the digital fingerprint of every financial institution in the U.S.'s documents are. So essentially, we have this database of what that digital fingerprint should be. We've also built, of course, our internal fraud detection, flagging system. And then, as you start to get kind of the macro perspective on having millions and millions of documents, and you start to create a footprint of like, well, what are the qualities of a authentic document, and then what are the qualities of an inauthentic document, and that's basically with the last 3 years of learning, and like I said, millions and millions of documents going through our fraud detection solution. That's how we've come up with it.
So if I apply that I'm Elon Musk and I make $1 billion a year, you guys would catch that.
Yeah, most definitely, even Elon.
Okay, sounds like black magic to me, but I love the idea. It's definitely something that it's again one of those kind of technology solutions that, as an operator, you may not think of, right? Like that there's a solution for you to help you with this. You may not even be aware that you really have a problem, and it makes a lot of sense once you talk through it. So cool. So let's talk about the survey that you guys just recently performed, and what good information there is there to share with folks.
Yeah, of course. So, we did a survey of 230 institutional property managers in early 2020. The firms that were surveyed are, among the largest. 40% of those were, managed at least 10,000 units or more. And we went through a variety of titles, property managers, regional managers, leasing managers, and all of those titles were involved with the application process. 84% of them were actually managing that process. And what we wanted to figure out is what keeps these folks up at night. And the results that came back in order were, rent related issues, damage to property, obviously evictions and bad debt, tenants just, flat out, skipping out. And of course, last on the list was disruptive, tenants, who are also creating, criminal activity. We also then asked them about, what they believed the trends were, that were causing, these problems. And unsurprisingly, the number one reason that they cited is essentially an increased prevalence in fraud in our society. I think there's no doubt, if you look at PPP fraud or just, general highlights, headlines in the news, that, fraud is up across the board, really in every industry. And unfortunately, property management is no, isn't any safer, as consumers have just become more and more comfortable with fraud. It's also, that it's become incredibly easy to alter a financial document like a bank statement or a pay stub. It's no secret that, if you download a document, depending on what software you have on your computer, it might immediately pop up in a PDF editor, or, there's hundreds and hundreds of websites out there. So it's just become incredibly easy. And then you pair that with, increasing rents, which, of course, have been all over the news, pandemic related eviction moratoriums. As far as like my portfolio in LA, that's still something that we're dealing with. And I think the last one, which, is a big one as well, is that there's less in-person contact with, potential residents. More and more leasing is done online with virtual tours, or without that in-person contact. And I think the reality is that it makes people, feel more and more comfortable with committing fraud.
Got it. And so this seems like this would well. Let me ask this question first. Was there any indication then, like how many on a percent basis fraudulent applications can a property manager expect on a monthly basis?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're seeing, so I think as of today, we've got about 850,000 units across the country. On a monthly basis, we're running about 50,000 applicants, through, typically in excess of 150,000 documents. And what we're seeing each month is anywhere between 10 to 12% of our customers' applicants are falsifying documents. So it's an incredibly common, really nationwide. I mean, regardless of market, there are certain areas that are, hot spots. Places like the Southeast or Southern California are certainly hot spots, but, we're talking, they're in the 15, 20% as opposed to 10 or 12%. So still remarkably high everywhere else. And I think the other bit that we've found to be really interesting is how having um, uh, a fraudulent document, software in place, how it also reduces the prevalence of fraud over time. So the average property that's using Snappt for the first month has a 17% fraud rate. But then after 4 months, we're seeing an average of a 35% reduction in fraud. So going down to 10 or 11%.
Now, why would that be? Words out that snaps at that property and don't bother submitting your fraudulent docs there?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is all uh, hypothetical. Of course, that we can't see this in the data, but of course, the anecdotal stories that we hear from our teams, the things that we're reading on Reddit, that fraudsters are saying about us. Yeah, that's pretty much the case. There's this whole um, you know sub community that exists online, that is essentially helping one another find properties and tactics of how to get in. And one thing that we see over and over, which certainly brings a smile to my face, is basically, if you see this logo or you see this document upload page, don't bother. So it's a pretty cool feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good viral marketing for you. Take those, take those take those dark web reviews and put them on your webpage.
Yeah, that does mean you need to scrub your home address and cell phone and everything from the internet. So it's good for the business, not always great for me personally.
Anecdotally, would you say that the most of the profile of people that are going through the trouble are sophisticated enough to create these falsified documents? Are they are these guys all Gen X folks, like Gen Z? My generation were too old and stuffy to figure this out. Are they younger? Are they? Do you think it's malicious? Like they're participating in these Reddit forums to figure out how to do this, or is this just like, is it so easy to do this now that somebody who's more or less well intentioned but doesn't have documentation showing they make enough money would do this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say, D, all the above. As you mentioned, anecdotally, of course, we're only looking at, the document and verifying, the data within it. So we don't know the rest of the story, but obviously having, a large portfolio of properties using us, of course, we're in constant contact with our customers. And yeah, we aren't of the belief that the majority of this, 10 to 12% that are falsifying documents are doing so with the intention of never paying rent. I think the majority of people are doing this well intentioned. I think, not to pontificate here too much about where our society is going, but I am a millennial, guilty, and um, you know we grew up with social media, and I don't think everybody quite understands that, that's people's highlight reels, right? That this isn't necessarily, your day-to-day life. Most of the time I'm staring at a computer screen. And I think our generation has been really pushed on credit, buy now, pay later, um, you know, uh, having this kind of instant gratification lifestyle. And so, if you look at some of these, communities that are out there, I mean, they're stunning, and they have, you know, uh, common areas and pools and gyms and concierge, and the developers and owners are doing a great job of making this applicant have this emotional connection with the space. And it gets normalized to think of, oh, well, I can move a couple numbers around and it's super easy to do and everybody does it, and I'm going to pay my rent, or maybe I'm going to start driving for Uber, or I'm supposed to get this this raise, or I'm going to cash out my crypto, or I think there's a lot of ways that people can rationalize why this is an okay thing to do, and it's a victimless crime. But again, 50% of evictions are a result of this type of fraud, and if an applicant has a fake document, there's seven time higher chance that they're going to end up in bad debt and eviction. Even the most well-intentioned applicant, if they have fake documents, we would highly suggest not leasing to them.
Is this a phenomenon that you see more with Class A properties, with people thinking along the lines of what you just outlined, or does this really affect equally all classes of assets?
It really does. Going into this, we had so many different, hypotheses about, well, maybe this is a class. You can rationalize it in so many different ways. Well, oh, it must be the more high-end communities because this means that people are more sophisticated. I've heard other people say, oh, this must be the more low-end communities where people are, really trying to make ends meet. And the reality is that we haven't seen any discernible data point that points to Class A, Class B, or Class C properties more one than the other. The only thing that we've seen is really has to do with certain areas of the country seem to be um, uh, more of a lightning rod than others. But yeah, as far as the uh, class of property, we haven't seen anything actionable or useful.
Got it. Were there any other juicy bits from the survey that you wanted to share that we didn't give you a chance to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, when speaking with property managers, that the big three things that they mentioned, that what the amount of time that their leasing teams are spending on the actual application process is, unsurprisingly, verifying that someone's financial documentation is authentic is one of the biggest time sucks. Having people play detective, trying to call HR departments, or um, is just incredibly time consuming, as well as checking references. And so as much technology and process that can be brought in, it's really just a best practice of how to keep your bad debt low, and make sure that your properties are fully occupied.
There you go. Amen. Um, Before we wrap up, Daniel, anything on the horizon for you guys that you can share with us? What's next for Snappt? Is just executing on the existing strategy? You guys raised a bunch of money. Is that predicated on a new class of service you're rolling out? Can you talk about the future?
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for asking. Yeah, look, the vision has always been, when Noah and I first talked about this back in 2017. I mentioned the phrase earlier of having an emotional connection with the space. As a property owner, if you've got a qualified applicant, standing there in the unit, you want to transact as quickly as possible, and I think what we're doing right now is incredibly useful of telling you whether or not that applicant's documents are authentic. But of course, the next step is also verifying that this applicant's identity is who they say it is, and then of course next is actually going to the underlying underwriting of the document. So ensuring, as an example, that this applicant's income is in line with a 3-to-1 income to rent ratio. That's very, very much underway for Snappt, and something that we'll be releasing in 2023, which is essentially a soup to nuts, financial and identity and income verification. So yeah, we'll be really excited to announce that pretty soon.
Is that also screening? I mean, you say background. Is that part of that actual resident screening, full resident screening function?
No, so we don't, so credit, criminal history, eviction history, the actual underlying application process, we see that as being um, a well-defined industry, lots of great partners, lots of great players there that are doing that. And so what we want to do is essentially just add a layer and verify what we think is the other 50%, which is this person who they say they are, and are their financials authentic, and do they qualify? And we see this as being useful for multifamily, single family, the credit space, financial services. There's a lot of spaces for us to go, but of course, being multifamily, kind of born and bred. This is of course the first industry that we're cutting our teeth in.
Yeah, it's nice to see technology companies born here in multifamily spread to other verticals. So we'll watch closely to see as that unfolds. Daniel, thanks for taking the time to sit with us today. If people are interested, want to learn more, spell your website for us so that everybody knows where to go.
Yeah, sure. So it's www.snappt.com. That's S as in Sam, N as in Nancy, A as in Apple, P as in Paul, P as in Paul, T as in Tom.com.
There you go. 2 P's and a T. Thanks, Daniel. Been a real pleasure talking with you. Good luck. Congratulations on all your success so far. And it sounds like a great solution. Appreciate you sharing some of the details with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us at this week's episode of the Apartment Academy podcast. The Apartment Academy is a production of Leonardo 24/7, the industry's leader in multifamily operations and maintenance software. At Apartment Academy, we realize the hard work that goes into property management and the stress that comes along with it. Leonardo 24/7 takes the guesswork out of your team's day-to-day by providing customized daily guidance on tasks that need to be done, guaranteeing consistent operations across your entire portfolio. To learn more, visit www.leonardo247.com today.